recently named a board member of the Latino Corporate Directors Association, and of course, she is the chair of Angeles Investors. Clearly, an amazing board leader, female board leader, and a Hispanic board leader. And so we call it the Reina de los Boards. So she's la reina de los boards. So Adela, very honored to have you here, and please let's start the charla with Mario Marte, CFO of Chewy.
Thank you so much. Love that introduction. But I'm really thrilled and very appreciative that all of you would join us, both here in Miami, many of you from many places across the United States, even in the midst of these stormy weather, but also virtually. And so we appreciate that. And I'm so excited to be talking to Mario today because he has an incredible background, and we're going to learn so much from his own experience in a startup that is way far more advanced than the startups that we have the opportunity to invest in, but it's going to give us a sense for the trajectory. So Mario, thank you very much for joining us here, and I'm so excited about that. And you have a great position at Chewy, and you're the chief financial officer there. But it hasn't been overnight. You have a great background, which we love to hear about because so many of us are immigrants. So your story of immigrant success is one that inspires us and motivates us. So I'd like to hear something before we talk about Chewy, about your personal background, your parents, what motivated you, because you also have a fabulous educational background. So if you could talk about some of that, that would be great.
First of all, thank you, Adela. Thank you for inviting me today, and it's great to actually see people again in person. We're finally getting there, so it's exciting to be here. So thank you. I'll give you the 60-second version. So I'm a middle child of three boys. My parents, one was a banker, the other one was a business person. My dad had his own business in the Dominican Republic, which is where I was born. And from them, I learned early on hard work, dedication, commitment. We're a very small family. My family is, for the most part, just a couple of uncles and aunts and very few cousins. So very small family, but that family unit was there. My parents unfortunately divorced a few years after I was born, and my mother remarried and we moved to the U.S. And so I think that move to the U.S. when I was 13, I certainly brought a lot of what I learned as a young child in the DR, but I had to learn other things in the U.S. First of all, the language, of course. Getting when you're 13 years old, imagine that, and learning the language. I think some of you potentially may have experienced the same. Always fun to be in middle school and or high school and learning a new language, but also you learn empathy. You learn how to get along with others. You learn how to interact better. I think it really forced the idea that you can't that things change. So you have to become really adaptable, and that's what my brothers and I did. And that's certainly what I did early on, and it helped me tremendously as I moved on through the rest of my life and my career.
But one of the things, as an immigrant myself, and I came at 6, you had a much shorter period of time to be college ready. And what about college? I mean, my parents didn't go to college. Did your parents go to college? Did they know that you should take the SATs? What kind of tools or advice were in place to get you to college and then to your graduate education?
My mother went to college, but my dad did not. He had a family business. So, but my mom went to college, and she knew the importance of education, and that was pretty clear early on. But education in the DR versus education in the U.S., there's no SAT, there's no PSAT, there's nothing like that. So for me, I had to do two things. One is I had to learn sort of to navigate everything that gets you into college. Certainly, I had to navigate selecting a college, right? In the Dominican Republic, there are a few colleges, a few universities, very good ones, but selection is a little easier, right? If you grow up in Santo Domingo, the capital city, likely is that you will go to school there. There are a few universities there. But selecting the university and then going through the process of getting accepted was something I had to learn very quickly. For me, I made very good friends, and I learned very quickly. This is again, you adapt really quickly. I knew I looked, by about a year later after I arrived, I knew that I had to take the SAT and the ACT, if you remember that. I'm not sure if that's even around anymore.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that'll give you an idea of how long it's been for me. But I knew I had to take those tests, and then I knew I had to do really well. And lucky for me, I did very well in both tests. It took a lot of work, and then selecting the college for me, it's going to sound a little silly, but at that age, you're newly arrived more or less. I wanted to go where my best friend went to college, and so she applied to XYZ universities, and I applied to XYZ universities. I got into some universities that I really wanted to go, and but anyways, I went to University of South Florida. Yes.
Great. And you were here. You when you came to the U.S., it was here in Miami.
Well, we like to joke that we went to Rhode Island, Providence, and if you spend one winter and you come from the Caribbean, you know exactly how many winters you'll spend there. So we moved to Tampa, Florida.
I see.
Yes,
So mostly here.
Mostly here, yes.
And then I saw in your background that you had some very interesting summer programs. You went to work for Goldman, I think, and then you went right to consumer products, even before you went to business school. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because your career is really defined by, the consumer product industry within being a finance executive.
So much of work life, right? It's hard work, but it's also a bit of luck. There's an organization called Inroads, if anybody knows about Inroads, that when I was in high school, again through my best friend, she said, I want to go. There's an organization and we both got accepted into Inroads in high school. So I was able to intern with Accenture, which at that point, again, I'm aging myself, was called Anderson Consulting. So I started interning with Anderson Consulting as a freshman going into my sophomore, going into my freshman going into my sophomore year. Early on. I mean, I was 19, and here I was interning with a consulting firm. So from there, I ended up working. I also interned with Procter Gamble a couple of summers in Cincinnati. And what that did to me at that age was the possibilities were incredible. I had no idea the world of consulting existed. I had no idea that people paid other people to come in and give them advice or to do work for them, to implement systems. So it just it opened up the possibilities tremendously. And then my time at Procter Gamble, it was 2 summers in Cincinnati. I had never lived away from home, so that was new. And Procter is an amazing company, and I had a chance to meet John Pepper, the CEO of Procter at that point. And I was just blown away by how engaging he was with this kid who was an intern. And I still kind of obviously get a little choked up about it because I thought, this is what I want to be like. This is the person I want to be.
That's amazing. I love that story because it's so many learning points, not just for us, but for us as parents that have to guide, the next generation, and for the younger generation that works with us. We have a lot of interns that help us to put these programs together. So it's really valuable to hear those insights. Now, can you bring us up to date from maybe business school? And you chose Duke, which I guess that makes sense from the South. But tell us what motivated you there, and bring us up to date to Chewy, where you've been a number of years already.
I have. Coming out of undergrad, I was an engineer undergrad. I went into consulting, so I was with Accenture for about 3 years. Loved the experience of consulting, but I knew that I wanted to be at the decision point, not at the implementation point. Consultants come in and they implement things. Executives decide, and I wanted to be on the decision side. As an engineer, I knew that was going to be a harder path to get to the CFO, CEO role. So for me, getting an MBA was critical. You mentioned Goldman Sachs. I went to Duke University for my MBA. Between my first and second year, I interned with Goldman Sachs, 10 phenomenal weeks in New York with Goldman. And the experience there taught me that I wanted to be in corporate, not in professional services, not in banking. Although I liked that, it was on the corporate side. So then I joined American Airlines, coming out of business school. They still have, and they certainly had at that point, a gold standard of finance rotational program, MBA rotational program. If you look at the executives that lead or have led airlines around the world, a lot of them start at American, and it's an amazing sort of program. And I thought, if I'm going to join an airline, and I love the airline industry, that was going to be it. So I joined American. I spent 8 years there in many different roles. Loved the work, loved the people. The industry was opportunity filled, I like to say, during those times. There was a lot of financial challenges to the industry in 2003 to 2011. So the richness that I got was professionally, let's just say it that way. But I learned a lot. So after that, after 8 years, I decided to join Hilton Worldwide, privately held company, getting ready to become a public company. It was owned by Blackstone. And I wanted to go through that public offering. And I also wanted to continue to be a finance person, not an airline person. And at 8 years, you have to make a decision which way you go. So I joined Hilton, moved to DC, got to live in DC. I had a chance to live in London. Loved the time with Hilton Worldwide. Phenomenal leadership team. Blackstone it's an incredible private equity firm. And after 4 years and going through the public offering, I picked up a phone call for Chewy, a very small startup in South Florida, headquartered at the design center of the Americas, which if you drove up, you had no idea that a pet e-commerce company is housed there. This is where they have $30,000 sofas and $5,000 lamps. Well, they had Chewy there. And I picked up the call, and I came to visit. And what convinced me to join Chewy was the passion in the founder, Ryan Cohen, who's still he's an amazing guy, very young, but he looked at me and he said, "Mario, you have to join. Like, I don't know what it's going to take, but you have to join Chewy because we're going to win this. We're going to win e-commerce, or we're going to win pet." And it's a longer conversation, but that passion sold me on the company. And I left a very good job with Hilton, and I moved to South Florida, and I joined this company that once I got here, I realized we didn't have a lot of cash in the bank, and we were burning through it. And I thought of opportunity filled again, industry, but best decision I made.
Wow. And by the way, we share a love for the hotel and airline industry. I also served on the board of I'm blanking out, the Wyndham International Hotels, which Blackstone ended up buying.
Yep.
And I was on the committee overseeing that transition. So I know it's like, there's just something special about hotels and working in them. The culture of welcoming people is very special.
Mm-hmm.
But we're fascinated about Chewy because, again, we're investing in pre-seed, mostly seed, and we had the fabulous opportunity to invest in the Series A as co-leads of the Series A for Canela Media. Our members participated in a private placement of over $20 million. We put in over $1.5 million. So we are fascinated by what stage was Chewy at when you joined, and then what were the different movements that took it to be a New York Stock Exchange listed company today?
So I'll give you the timeline in a compressed sort of couple of minutes. Chewy was founded September 2011. We raised, and I joined in 2015, but so 2011 was founded. 2014 was the first round, A and B. C came shortly thereafter. I joined in 2015. In 2015, we were about to raise, April 2015, we were about to raise our round D. So we had gone through 3 series at that point. The company was certainly had grown. It had grown from zero, obviously, in 2011 to about 200 million in sales, but it had raised about 80 million at that point. So to give you a perspective on the size. When I joined, we certainly did not have 80 million in the bank. We had a lot less than that, and we were getting ready to raise our round D. The news that we got when we approached bankers was not great. We were told this is not going to be an up round. And if you're trying to raise funds, you want to be an up round. Otherwise, things get very uncomfortable. So we paused, and then it was a how do we stop burning cash, and then how long can we go with that round D? We went to the market and raised round D, and about 4 or 5 months later, at a double the valuation we had raised round C. And the question is, how were we able to do that? I think, and to give you a perspective, we had a great market fit for the company. What we were doing was working. What the founder, the two co-founders had done, and what the team had done was working, but the financial model was not working. We were growing to death. If you've heard that phrase before, we were growing and burning too much cash as we grew. And so you reach that asymptote where you cannot grow any further without raising more cash. And of course, every time you go to the market and raise, you're diluting yourself. You're diluting, if you're a founder, diluting investors. So we had figured out a way to unlock the financial model and allow us to grow very fast to then the next round. We had to do many other things, by the way. And those were like the miracle 5 months, because so much happened there. None of us slept at all. But we were able to get it to a point where we can raise round D. And then 6 months later, we raised round D at a higher valuation than that. And a year later than that, we raised round F at double the valuation. And 2 weeks after we closed round F, we announced a sale to private equity, to BC Partners, at a 70% premium to round F.
Wow.
So in 2 years, we raised 3 rounds and we sold to private equity. And we grew from 200 million to 2.1 billion.
Wow. And the valuation when you went public, and what were the steps then to take it public? But at that point, when you sold to a private equity firm, all of the investors came out. Did the founder retain an interest? Was there a major management change, but you stayed? Tell us about that.
Yeah, certainly. So from 2015, as I said, 2015 to 2017, the company grew 10x on the top line, and we sold at a valuation that was about 9x what round C had sold, so in about 2 years. At that point, as you said, as you asked, the investors were cashed out. So single trigger. This is a monetization event for both the founders and all the investors. So now we were wholly owned by BC Partners through PetSmart, right? Through the PetSmart's balance sheet, but we're wholly owned by BC Partners. The founders stepped away, and most of the management team stepped away about a year later. And I became CFO in the summer of 2018. And we were named a new CEO just a couple of months before I became CFO. So he became CEO, and then he named me CFO a couple of months later. 2 months after I became CFO, 2 or 3 months after I became CFO, the chairman said, "Hey, I was on vacation. Hey, can you fly in? I want to chat with you and the CEO." And of course, chairman says, "Jump." What do you say, right? What do you ask? How high?
Hi.
So I immediately got on a plane, flew in, and we sat in the meeting. He said, "Look, I want you guys to file to go public. I want you guys to get ready." And having gone through the IPO at Hilton, my head started turning. So what is the checklist? What are the things we need to do? And I was very calm, because you kind of know, all the steps, enough. And he had to ask. It's like, why you look too calm? You're either in shock or you're too comfortable. And my answer was, no, we got this. We're going to do it. And 2 months later, we had filed our S1 with the SEC confidentially. 2 months after that, we had filed it publicly, and we went public in June 2019 At a valuation, we opened at $36, which is a valuation about 15 to $16 billion.
Wow.
So in 2 years, we sold to BC for 3.35 billion, which is today still the largest e-commerce transaction in the U.S., private e-commerce. And 2 years later, we went public at a valuation. We opened at about 15 billion, give or take, which is today the largest e-commerce IPO in the U.S.
Now, was it the original assets, or did it include assets from PetSmart as well?
The original assets, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because in that time we had grown from 2.1 billion to about 3.5 billion in sales, and we had now right-sized the P&L. So we had adjusted our balance sheet. We had sort of pivoted on that. Cash flow was, we were not burning cash. We didn't burn any cash throughout the whole time, from 2015 through 2019 through the IPO. We didn't burn a single penny of all that cash we raised, and we grew. And then I can tell you more post IPO if you like. Yeah.
So this is what makes investing in startups so incredibly exciting. The journey has so many turns, and the great stories are what keep you motivated to continue to invest. So we love that. But I want to talk again about your career, because yes, you have seen internal financial expertise and run a business now that is worth, 15, $16 billion. And so, of course, you would be a candidate, very attractive for the boardroom. But you do know, because I know that you're a member of LCDA and I'm on the board of LCDA, that of all the groups in America, we are the worst represented in the boardroom. Can you talk a little bit about your journey? Because we have a lot of professionals that are members of Angeles, and we're always curious, how does that happen? How does the call, what are the connections that are important to get on a board?
Certainly, the journey to get on the board, right?
Yes.
For me, I think you can get on the board, and you certainly, you're an expert at this, so I'm sure whatever I leave out, you'll add. But in my mind, I think there are kind of three ways to get on the board. One is certainly through a connection, and that I would say most it's going to be that personal connection, that network certainly helps. For me, it was through, so that's one. The second one is being a CEO, of course, being a founder or CEO, being a C-suite in your own company, and then that kind of again gets you the network onto the next one. For me, it was through a search firm. So there are 4 major search firms in the U.S. I think everyone knows that at the executive level, and for me, it was I got a call, and it was, Mario, I'm interested. There's a board. They're looking for a new member. Do you have a few minutes to discuss it? It's in the retail space, and they've identified you as somebody they want to talk to. So of course, these 4 firms call. You got to get on the radar screen, by the way. If you want to be on a board, get on the radar screen. Super important to do that. Get on the radar screen of banks. Banks take a ton of companies public. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. Surely, if there's a connection there, that's you get your name in the mix. For me, they called. I said, of course, let's spend a few minutes, and they told me the story about the company and the CEO and why they wanted my background on the board. I was determined that I was not going to be a placement, right? If I'll leave it at that. I wanted to be somebody who can make an impact on the board, on the company, who would have who can deliver value. Otherwise, why would I just show up to a board meeting? Find somebody else to come and keep the seat warm. But I met the first thing after meeting the search firm and learning about it, I met the CEO of the company, Corey Berry, who I walked away of that conversation thinking, I called up the search firm and I said, not only am I interested, is what do I have to do to get on this board? Because I love Corey and I love what they're doing. I love how her answers. And so for me, it was about getting comfortable with the type of company, the industry, where the company was in its journey, and certainly the management team. If you're not comfortable with the management team or the board itself, don't join, because these people in a way represent are an extension of your own brand. And I can tell you about the board as well. I met almost every single board member, and I walked away after each meeting, after each call, feeling even better about the idea of joining the board, because I knew it was going to be a very engaged board where everyone had a voice, and that was incredibly important to me. Again, I did not want to join a board where where one person spoke, the chairman or whoever, and everyone else said yes. I wanted one where everybody spoke, and I have been proven right every single meeting we've had as a board.
That's great, and those are great characteristics to look for. But for sure, nobody would think that going on that board would be an easy task. The company was just emerging, right, from a restructuring, and nothing has been harder than retailing. So I can only imagine the challenges you've faced during the pandemic, to keep the relevance of the business going. So no, I think you chose a very challenging area. And let me ask you, we have to wrap up. As a director, I know the kinds of um, the strategies for improving the participation of minorities on boards. You have to have a large selection offering of board ready candidates. You can't go in with just one person that you think is great, because it never happens. It's you got to have, a whole range of bios, and know these people and know that they're going to withstand the kind of interviewing and review that exists. But I can't speak to being in the C-suite. And what kind of input do you have at Chewy, for example, in terms of helping them diversify that board? And I know there is diversity there. I mentioned, I knew some of the people on the board,
Mhm.
but what kind of impact and input can you, as the CFO, offer for that board?
I think I was very fortunate in the sense that when we were getting ready to go public, one of the first things you have to do is the board makeup. What does that board look like? And if you list on the one of the exchanges in the U.S., you have certain requirements. You have to have an independent board member within the first on the day you IPO. The second one 90 days later. The third one a year later. And as I said, I was fortunate because I was able to help craft what the board would look like for Chewy as a public company. We have a phenomenal board. It is a controlled board still because we're majority owned by a private equity, by BC Partners still. They own about 80% of the company. So they still control it. But what I wish I had at that stage was some sort of inroads into LCDA. Quite honestly, it would have I joined LCDA in late 2020. If I had known about LCDA or been a member when we went public in 2019, I may have had a couple of other names I would have added to the list, and I would have pushed for more for a broader diversity. We are a diverse board, but that's why it's so important for us to continue to expand the membership. Because just like me as a CFO of a company that was IPOing, there are others who are also CFOs of companies, and they may not be Latino, but they may have a interest in a diverse board and diverse ideas. So that's really key. And also, to your point, if you have not just one name, have many names that you can present, and if you're approached for a board and you have no interest for whatever reason, maybe there's a conflict, be ready to say, I'm not available, or this is not for me, but maybe David would be great for this. And let me give you David, let me give you Adela's name, and let me give you somebody else's name, because that's how you expand it. And the search firms will write these names down. They will say, let me look into it. They'll look you up on LinkedIn. It becomes that network effect starts to expand our reach. And I think it's incredibly important to be connected and to be an advocate for diversity on the board.
Thank you so much. I mean, this has been so incredibly valuable on so many levels at the early investment stage, and to get an inside view of how a startup takes off and becomes a New York Stock Exchange listed enterprise is just thrilling. We could talk on and on and on about so many parts of Mario Marta's background and what he does. So I hope those of you that are here will have the opportunity to connect with him more. But thank you so much. We wish you all the best. And I know there's many more stories and success stories to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Adela. Thank you, everyone.